afternoon. It is Tuesday, March 7th at 4:30. We have a quorum. I'm calling this meeting to order, and I want to remind everyone that we reserve the right to reconvene, reassess, or realign the regular session or called executive session or order of business at any time prior to adjournment. That brings us to item number 2, citizen comments. We have Becky Schmitz signed up, and if you will come forward and state your name and address, you will have 3 minutes.
Yes, I have some. Hi guys, my name is Becky Schmitz, and I live on Main Street. My store is also on Main Street, 1105 Main Street. I own Vibe Tribe, a family of artists where I represent over 50 local artists. 8 years ago, I opened my first tiny shop in the R.A. Green Mercantile on Main Street. Over 7 years, I was able to grow my business, moving up to the front larger shops. Last year, I expanded to a new location, all of our own, at 1105 Main Street, across from the historic Bastrop Opera House. Although our new location has less visibility with much more space, we could represent more artists and better share our special business with the community. And the side of my building, a very large 750 square foot wall facing Main Street, would be a perfect palette to draw in the foot traffic. After months of hard work and investments, I designed, purchased, and installed a sign on the side of my building, and immediately my sales increased. On November 26th of last year, code enforcement came to Vibe Tribe and told me I would have to remove my sign. The main issue being because my front door is not located on this large side of my building that faces Main Street, I would not be allowed to put any kind of sign or the name of my business on my wall. And since I could not afford a $3,500 sign variance fee, I was forced to remove my sign. Since removing my sign, my sales have significantly decreased. I'm requesting that I be able to put signage on this side of my building so that my business, the artists I represent, and the support we offer to our community may continue to thrive. It has been my goal to share my dream with the community in the best way possible. We work with the youth, encouraging arts and personal growth, whilst also providing a safe space. We help coordinate the First Friday Art Walk as well as many other community support endeavors. I am so thrilled to be making a better impact in our community with our new space. However, if I'm not permitted to attract business, ultimately our ability to add to the community will suffice. I will not give up on Vibe Tribe. It is my passion and my true purpose. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for hearing from me today. I'm grateful for the opportunity, and I welcome you all to visit Vibe Tribe Wednesday through Sunday, 11 to 6 p.m., and see for yourself just how special our endeavor truly is. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Schmitz. Do you need the pictures back, or are you giving us these?
I just wanted to provide some
Okay, so I'm going to
inputs.
give them to our city secretary, and
Okay.
she can scan them in. Because this was citizen comments and it's not posted for discussion, we can't visit with you about it, but our city manager is going to give you her business card. She's right there.
Okay.
And you can visit with her, and I bet she'll be getting with you right away.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys
Appreciate
so
you for
much.
coming
I
out.
appreciate
Mayor.
it. Have a great day.
We can't
Yes, ma'am, I
discuss it.
can. I motion that we place the approval of a sign permit for Mrs. Schmitz on the next agenda.
We can direct the city manager to address that on our agenda.
And I can make this motion as well. Second.
So the motion won't necessarily, it's not an item or action to be voted on, but it can be a request made by the council member to have the item put on the next council member, so on the next council agenda. So if that's what we're requesting, we,
Yeah.
That is
So
exactly what I'm requesting,
Right,
yes.
okay.
we could take note of that.
Okay, I
Yeah,
can
that's his
request
point.
it.
That's why I'm looking at you. We can't vote on it. It's not a motion. It's a request. And just like we're directing her to meet with the city manager, and in fact, they may be able to work something out to where it doesn't even need to be on the next agenda. But we want to get it addressed, and we're directing the city manager to address her concerns.
I concur. If it's not addressed, either because of perhaps inability to, the code may not allow it, whatever the reason, I would like it to be on the next agenda.
Got it. All right, we are moving on to item 3, which is the consent agenda. We have 3 items for the consent agenda. Council, does anybody wish to pull something off the consent agenda? Anybody in the audience want anything pulled off of the consent agenda? Madam Secretary, if you'll please read the consent agenda.
The consent agenda reads as follows. Item 3A, consider action to approve resolution number R-2023-40 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, confirming appointment by the Mayor of Michael Lucas, Place 3 of the Parks Board as required in Section 3.08 of the city's charter and establishing an effective date. Item 3B, consider action to approve resolution number R-2023-42 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, approving a joint agreement between the City of Bastrop and Bastrop Independent School District, City of Elgin, City of Smithville, Elgin Independent School District, Lexington Independent School District, McDade Independent School District, and Wildwood Municipal Utility District for the May 6, 2023 special and general election for Bastrop, Texas, attached as Exhibit A, authorizing the city manager to execute all necessary documents and providing an effective date. Item 3C, consider action to approve resolution number R-2023-43 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, authorizing participation with the state of Texas through the Office of the Attorney General in the latest global opioid settlements and approving settlement participation form submission to Attorney General Office, authorizing the city manager to execute all related documents and providing for an effective date. This concludes the consent agenda.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Council?
I move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion to approve Mayor Pro Tem Rogers and a second from Councilmember Lee. Is there any further discussion? Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Rogers,
Yes.
Councilmember Lee,
Yes.
Councilmember Crouch,
Yes.
Councilmember Kirkland.
Yes.
Thank you, Council. The consent agenda is approved as read. We're moving on to items for individual consideration. The first item is 4A, consider action to approve resolution number it usually says R, 2023-33, the agreement for subdivision plat regulation in the City of Bastrop's ETJ in Bastrop County, known as 1445 agreement, provide for repeal and providing an effective date. Council, we have one person signed up to speak, and I'm going to let the city manager do a little bit of an overview and then call the citizen who signed up to speak. Before I have Ms. Creo visit about that, I just want to send out a thank you to both the county engineer and Commissioner Beckett. The 4 of us have had a number of meetings, worked really well together, and very proud of the product that we have, and appreciate their cooperation. It's been helpful, and I think it'll be helpful moving to the future. Ms. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Council, as you know, this has been a pretty drawn-out process trying to get joint cooperation between the city and county on what are really, really important regulations for our growth and future development along specific corridors. Bastrop County has agreed to work with us through 2 very important items, and that is one, understanding that the city needs to remain solvent, and we have some pretty significant investments in our water and wastewater plants. And so at the last council meeting, you guys took action to approve the agreement with Corex, which is essentially going to send flows down to our wastewater treatment plant. What this 1445 does is allow us to honor our commitments to Corex, honor our obligation within our CCN boundaries to make sure that our residents and the ratepayers are protected, and then honor any agreements that we enter into a developer or a development agreement who plans to have access to city service or utilities. So there's a table in the agreement. I sent it to you via email. There's a table in the agreement as to who has authority, and really what it turns out to is the county is going to need additional staff. They've got some revenues they need to be able to attract and retain to pay for that additional engineer and some other staff. But for us, from a longer term perspective, is protecting quality development in the area. making sure we have regional approaches to water and wastewater, making sure we have approaches to organized development that make sense for Bastrop and really look like what we want Bastrop to look like. So it was a long time in coming, but I think we're there. There was some question as to a map, and that's why the map is not included in the packet or the email that I sent later on, but it's a matter of where some lines are. It doesn't affect the material of the 1445 itself.
And the chart that she's talking about is on page 4 of the document that was on the dais for you. And suffice to say that the attorney who just turned on his light. Yes, sir, Mr. Pullum.
Yes, first and foremost, want the record to reflect that Councilmember Plunkett has entered the meeting and we now have a full dais. And then secondly, just here to answer any questions that might be on the 1445. You know, I think this is a fix that was necessary and needed to happen, and seeing it go through to help us with those developments with Corex and whatnot is actually going to help the city. So.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pullum. That was the other thing I was going to say, is that our attorneys have reviewed it. The county's
Yes.
attorneys have reviewed it. The county knows that we're discussing it today, and Commissioner Beckett is very encouraged that she's going to be able to take to Commissioner's Court a document that, if it gets approved today, will be already executed, and there'll be the final signature on it. One of the other key things that we did, because we've all seen the 3 different shades of green, and we have volunteer A and volunteer B, and nobody knows what A and B is, and we've really tried to clarify, and you'll find that in the definitions, where there's the city's portion and there's the county's portion, and it's really working together and try to make it easier for both developers and engineers to know whose rules to be following and who will be processing that plat. Ms. Creo, is there anything else that you wanted to add?
No, other than we will work through existing development agreements. Nothing should change for that. And then moving forward, we're pretty clear if the city's entering into a development agreement, it would be city regulations that apply.
And we all agreed it would be a tripartite agreement. That's
It's a
another
tripartite.
key part.
And that is a super key part. The county has long wanted a seat at the table to make sure their interests are protected, and we welcome them to have a seat at the table. They're at every Thursday Development Review Committee meetings as well.
So the communication has already improved. Mayor Pro Tem Rogers.
Well, first, before I make a motion to approve, I'd like to thank the city manager for taking the time and the stress of working it out. I'm sure it wasn't easy. And I appreciate the relationships that you're building, and keep it up. And I appreciate really all the time and hard work that all the parties put into this, and I'm happy to see it finally come to conclusion.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Rogers. Can we, how about if we hear from the citizen, or Councilmember Lee? Your mic's not on.
Drusilla said everything I wanted to say, so ditto.
All right, Myra Gepp, if you'll come forward and state your name and address, you'll have 3 minutes to address council.
My name is Myra Gepp. I live at 2108 Eastside Drive, Austin, Texas. First off, I represent West Bastrop Village. We're the developer of West Bastrop Village. Thank you for your time today to listen to me. I have a really little minor concern, and so and I want to commend the efforts that the progression that you're trying to do to heal the process and the coordination with the county to vision the long term of Bastrop. Completely appreciate that. What I have just briefly reviewed the document that was released on Friday, and so West Bastrop Village falls within your ETJ. We have a planned development agreement with you all. We've been here for 18 years, working toe-to-toe with y'all, and are super excited about your wastewater treatment plant. We have a wholesale water and wastewater agreement with you all. So we're here hopefully to bring what we call traditional neighborhood development, which is sidewalks, tree-lined streets, the garages are in the alley, and hopefully a little bit of neighborhood services, and hopefully we have some education at the end of the day, and we like to call that a complete community. in our agreement with you, in our plan development agreement, it says, and it's a function of the existing 1445 agreement, that in essence, we go through the review process, the development review process with you all, and your team does a great job reviewing that and gives us comments, and we respond to those comments, and we create a subdivision, and that subdivision becomes of record. And in that subdivision, it says that the county shall maintain the streets. And so our agreement with you supersedes the revision to this 1445 that is based on this older 1445. So just if you have a little patience with me, and I don't know if there's a clock ticking right now, so I'd appreciate if someone tells me if I'm getting close.
You're at 1:08.
Okay, great. Plenty of time. Everybody want to have a cup of coffee? So what I want to call your attention to is on page 4 of the agreement at the top of the page. At the top of the page, on the first line, it reads, and let me give a little background. This is under section 2.4, which is the maintenance of developments that fall within the defined in-city area, according to this agreement. And in the in-city area, according to section 2.4, and on the top of page 4, it says that when we get to a final plat, we need to insert a note and have a note on that plat that says and states that all public infrastructure shall be maintained by the developer, and until such time that is accepted, if at all, by the governmental entity for maintenance. And so currently I'm in a condition where the public infrastructure, that is water and wastewater, is maintained by the PUD. We have an obligation either through the MUD or the HOA to maintain the sidewalks, public sidewalks, and the county maintains the road. And so it's different than the agreement that you are entering into. And I know we've had some discussions about how we might be able to resolve that. I just would hope that you would make this agreement with a subject to the grandfathering or our existence, that we have a current agreement with you that states one thing, and this is slightly different. And so I just wanted to take the time to bring that to your attention. If you have any questions of me, I'd be happy to answer those in the remaining minute that I might have.
You're over. So, in the development world, you guys live in the grandfather world.
Yes.
Mr. Attorney, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, so, the changes to the 1445 agreement shouldn't affect your development agreement that you have with the city, and the city will do its best to abide by those agreements that have preceded this change or revision of the 1445 agreement.
If you want an email from the city manager or
Yes.
something that confirms that, because I know how you are, because we've known each other a very, very long time.
Well, we'd like to have, we like all our boxes
Something in
checked.
writing, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so, Madam City Manager, I don't think you have a problem providing her that, do you?
No, in fact, she's in a little bit of a gray area because where her plat is in process, but we agreed internally and at the table that we would work out. The issue with the county is utilities under the streets and drainage. They don't, they want a very narrow, her utilities and things are under the streets. And so we said that we would work through maintenance of the streets because she does have an annexation agreement with us anyway, so we didn't have any issue maintaining the streets and working through that process. So if I'm correct, you have a minor amendment to your project that is slated for Planning Commission this month also.
So minor amendments don't have to go to Planning Commission?
I'll work it out with.
Different meeting?
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Sorry.
but yes, we're working through that so that there is no issue. She can continue forward with her development as proposed.
Okay, so she'll send you documentation that says this new agreement doesn't impact you, and if you are not satisfied with that resolution, we both know you know how to get hold of me, and we will
Okay.
put it on a future agenda.
So in essence, we get reviewed and reviewed through the city process and only address their comments, and that the right now in the PDA, it says that the county shall maintain the public right-of-way, and what we're talking about is the city maintains the public
Yes.
right-of-way, and we're
Yes.
going to be fine with that.
Yes.
Okay, I appreciate your time.
Thank you,
Sorry
Myra.
for interrupting. And,
No worries.
thanks for
No
your-
present.
So, Mayor and Council, just so you're
Absolutely.
aware, in a good faith effort with the county, we said we would have tri-party agreements. And the county's tri-party section of this agreement essentially says, I told you how I wanted it, don't want it, even though it precedes this 1445. We're trying to be good partners, we're trying to be good friends, we know we're going to annex it at some point, so we're going to work through the logistics of doing that. So the county will still sign off, she'll still go through our review process, and again, in the spirit of cooperation, the county will issue their note, which will have no bearing to how she's doing her development.
All right, council, are there other items or questions that you have for me or the city manager? Happy to entertain a motion. Oh, I didn't think you made them.
Do you want me to make my motion again?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Got to sign up.
I didn't sign up, so.
Okay, did you say it's relevant? We need to hear from them? Is that what you said?
It's relevant to the same.
Okay. You have 3 minutes. 2 minutes. State your name and address.
My name is Rick Neff. I live at 136 Territory Drive in Bastrop. And our issue is very much the same about maintenance of the roads, in that we have a development agreement. We have, I'm hearing that it's probably not a problem. It sounds like it's going to be okay. But what we're running into right now is for years and years, the city reviewed our plans, we responded to comments, and we're doing great. Now the county, we're having to go through the county, and the county is giving us comments and saying, we want to approve your streets because they're not county roads, because they don't look like county roads, because they're not, and they're not intended to be. So we don't know how to respond to that. I mean, except to ignore it. I don't think we can do that. So that's our issue. Thank you.
So, Madam City Manager, same thing, right?
Same thing, yes. We will work it out through the development agreement. And again, there is some vesting that has happened here prior to the 1445. And it's a good conversation with the county, but the intent is not to disturb any existing development agreement.
And I can tell you from the hours, and I mean hours, of meetings that we've been in, it was really all about moving forward. It's nothing, nobody's wanting to go backwards, and it was, now that we've, because the 1445 has been around for quite a while, but it being around and using it's two different things, and so that's why we've made some revisions for it. But I know for a fact that Commissioner Beckett, it's all about putting things in place and how things would move forward. And some of the real, just to be super honest, part of the conversations has been MUDs that are next to Travis County line that we have absolutely no interest in, and they want to be the driving force on that they were afraid we were trying to get involved in that. So, all right. So I have a motion from Mayor Pro Tem Rogers.
Second.
And is that correct? A motion from Mayor Pro Tem Rogers and a second from Councilmember Lee. Is there any further discussion? Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Rogers,
Yes.
Councilmember Lee,
Yes.
Councilmember Plunkett,
Yes.
Councilmember Crouch,
Yes.
Councilmember Kirkland.
Yes.
Thank you, Council, unanimous, and I feel like I owe the city manager a bottle of champagne or something. We've spent a lot of time on that one. All right, we're moving on to item 4B. Consider action to approve resolution number R 2023-27 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, an agreement between the City of Bastrop and Bastrop River Company providing for a 5-year lease of a .52 acre portion of A11 Bastrop Town Track, acres 5.100 City Park, located in Fisherman's Park, with an option to renew for 3 additional 2-year terms upon mutual agreement, authorizing the city manager to execute said lease agreement on behalf of the city and declaring an effective date. Mr. Harrell was signed up to speak, but I don't see him here. Oh, there he is. He's hiding. He can't be leaning over. Mr. Harrell, we're talking about you. Would you like to come address council, or council, do you want to hear an overview? I think it says what we talked about in executive session. So, Mr. Harrell, you have 3 minutes if you'll state your name and address. Thanks for coming today.
Lee Harrell, 205 Perkins Street. So in regards to the lease,
Article 2.2 references the rent, and it also references Exhibit C being a scheduled increase, annual increase in rent, which comes out to be 6% a year. It was suggested to me in talking with the city staff about this that that was determined based on looking at current adjustment to consumer price index. That we are in the, coming off of some of the highest inflation we've seen in 20 years right now. So I don't think that the consumer price index adjustment right now is representative of what it's going to be over the next 5 years. So what I would suggest y'all consider is, since I'm looking at a 5-year lease, that you would look at the previous 5 years and average that year-over-year change to come up with what that annual change should be for the next 5 years.
So if it goes higher, will you be okay with it going higher as we continue to average the 5 years?
No, I'm saying figure out what that percentage change is over the last 5 years and just set it that over the next 5 years, it's going to increase by that percentage.
Okay, that's your proposal.
Yeah, that doesn't get, it's my proposal, yeah. It doesn't get adjusted every year.
Okay.
It's a simple formula. I think it presents a policy moving forward for dealing with future potential vendors leasing parkland. And in this particular circumstance, that average comes out to about 3%. I've also talked to a few commercial real estate managers over the last week, one locally, one in Austin. Both of them said the same thing. 6% increase is really high. I asked them about, is CPI normally used for these kind of circumstances? Both of them said it is something that can be used, but right now nobody's using it because it doesn't make sense, because we're in the middle of a huge inflation era. And things are expected to level back out to normal over the next couple of years. So the averaging scenario that I presented, I think kind of makes sense for going into the future as well. Like in 5 years, when it's time to renew for 3 years, we look at the previous 3 years, average that out, and that's what it'd be for the next 3 years. I think that's fair, and it's an easy formula for the city to follow moving forward. The 3% thing also, it just happened to be in line with a very common practice amongst commercial real estate. When there's a long-term lease, they're like 3% is kind of a normal annual increase. 6% is really high. That's just the feedback I got. Like I said, one local professional and one in Austin. They just said the same thing.
Thank you, Mr. Harrell. Mayor Pro Tem Rogers?
Mayor and Council, the average CPI over the last 5 years is 3.62.
Mayor Pro Tem Rogers? Your light, there you go.
Sorry, there's so many lights to turn on. I see his point totally. Is it something that we can look at each year before it goes up, if that index is off, or is that going to be too hard for the city to look at in the writing? Maybe leave it the way it's stated, because that's what we've got typed up. But then at the year time, when it's time, look at the index. If the economy's going really down, I don't want to punish him if it's going down, but you see what I'm saying?
So the request of the city manager, is it something that could be, would it be an undue burden to staff to review it annually?
No, I mean, it's published pretty quickly. I mean, it didn't take me but 2 seconds to pull it up online. If you go with his average, it's 3.62, an annual increase of 3.62 per year over the next 5 years. And really what is skewing that is CPI has been about 2.5. 2021 was 4.7, and this year has been 8%. So you do have that inflationary spike. Even if I threw out the 8%, we are at about 3%. So.
Okay, and then the other thing to keep in mind is that we also looked at the lease rates for other parklands at other cities, and so it's because it's the total bill that makes the difference. So. All right, thank you, Mr. Harrell. So, Council, what is your pleasure?
I have a question.
Councilmember Lee.
Thank
I
you.
didn't see your light.
I know.
Okay, sorry.
So I have a question. What would that look like? Because as it stands right now, what we have before us are these set amounts for over the next 5 years. So then would we have to do an amendment to the agreement at the end annually, once that's calculated, or how would that work?
I think the council should approve an annual increase incorporated in the contract of 3.5, 3.6, and over the next 5 years, and then we will revisit it at the first automatic renewal.
That's clearly the request, right? And
Yes.
council can do that and make it 3.5 for the next 5 years, or you can look at it annually and say 3.5 is okay, or to Mayor Pro Tem Rogers' point, if it continues to go down, maybe 3.5 is too high and council would want to give him a break, or, you know, it just depends on how often you want to look at it. It's a part of the budget process, so it's not a burden on staff. It's more of council has to tell staff what they want. Mayor Pro Tem Rogers?
And right now, it's at 6, is that correct?
It's in the lease agreement at 6, is
At
my
6.
understanding.
I think for some continuity for his lender, so he knows what his rent is, I think if the council set a rate, that would be good. And then if there's some super increase in inflation where that rate is higher, it's stagnant. If there's some super decrease and the Fed takes us to, 0.5% of interest again, we could revisit it. But I'll remind the council, we did have super higher lease rates in other parts of the state. So 3.5, I think, is a very reasonable number. Gives him some opportunity for planning and gives the council some opportunity for growth in the revenue.
Thank you, Madam City Manager. Mayor Pro Tem Rogers?
Well, I make a motion to approve the lease with the change of a 3.5% increase over the 6.
Second.
I have a motion from Mayor Pro Tem Rogers to approve the lease with the exception being that it would be a 3.5% increase over the first, I guess it's the first 5 years, right? And I have a second from Councilmember Kirkland. Everybody clear on what they are voting on?
I would like to make one comment, though. I would like the public to know that we did ask the Parks Board to look at this before it came to us, and they did approve leasing the property again. I just want them to know we let the Parks Board in the conversation.
Yeah, we appreciate our boards doing the vetting. And we also want to remind the public that the money goes to a parks fund. It does not go to the general fund. The money that's collected on this lease is for improvement of the parks. I have a motion. I have a second. Everybody's clear. Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Rogers,
Yes.
Councilmember Kirkland,
Yes.
Councilmember Lee,
Yes.
Councilmember Plunkett,
Yes.
Councilmember Crouch.
Yes.
Thank you, council. The motion passes unanimously. Congratulations, Mr. Harrell. Good luck on your business. All right, council, we're on the top of page 3. We're on item 4C. Consider action to approve amendments to the development agreement between the City of Bastrop and Colorado Bend LLC, authorizing the city manager to execute all necessary documents, providing for repeal, and providing an effective date. Council, we're going to be going into executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.071 and 551.087. And I'll let the public know that we fully expect to have the applicant, one of the applicants back with us if council has questions for them, and then we'll come out publicly and take care of any action that's necessary as a result of 4C. It is 5:03 and we're in executive session. Good evening. It is 5:57 and we are out of executive session. On item 4C, we won't be taking any formal action tonight. We have met with Colorado Bend LLC and given them some information, and we encourage them to work with both the city manager and the Bastrop Economic Development Corporation, and we look forward to them getting all of their information together and being on a future agenda. All right, council, we are moving on to item 4D. Hold a public hearing and consider action to approve the first reading of ordinance number 2023-04, Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, amending the Bastrop Building Block B3 Code, Chapter 6, Section 6.5.003, amending the authentic Bastrop pattern book and amending Bastrop Code of Ordinances, Section 3.01.001, International Code Council ICC, International Code Family, and providing for findings of fact, repeal or severability, codification, effective date, proper notice and meeting, and move to include on the March 28, 2023 consent agenda for a second reading. Ms. Bills.
Good evening. So this amendment is to address specifically fences. We had some conflicting codes between the building code and the B3 codes and the pattern book. So that's what this amendment is rectifying. So the first kind of amendment is to the B3 code itself. It provides a reference that says fences. To find the information on what is allowed for fences, it's in the building code section. So and that's Chapter 3 of the Code of Ordinances. Is where the building code is adopted, and in there we have an amendment for fences. The second is for the proposed amendments to the authentic pattern book. So in the pattern book, when it was adopted, it has a statement in there that the pattern book is mandatory for the Iredell District and the historic Bastrop Commercial District. We would be removing that and making the pattern book just a educational document. Nothing in the document will be mandatory. So it'll just be information that provides some kind of background for the code. And then the third is the actual language for fences. So in the International Building Code, fences that are 7 feet and under don't require a permit. What this does is amend the IBC. So any fences under 7 feet will be required. If you're replacing a fence that's already existing, there would be no permit required as long as you're replacing like for like in the same location. For a new fence, you'd be allowed in the first layer. The fences can't exceed 4 feet in height and must have a 50% transparency. And if one of my planners is very literal, and she literally thought that meant like windows, and I'm like, no, it just means the openings in the fences. You need to have 50% openings. And then prohibited fence types would include electric fences, barbed or razor wire fences, or any kind of fence wall material that would be sharp or protruding. And then fences that would block the sight triangle, which that information's in a technical manual of the B3 code. And then also that fences that are required for public safety as determined by Public Works, fire chief, or building official would be exempt. And then per Chapter 3, any requested variances to this section would go to the Construction Standards Board.
Thank you, Ms. Bills. I'm sorry, you have
So,
some.
well, so just to give a picture, so because I know some people like pictures and the clicker is not working for me. The orange line on the picture is what is considered the second and third layer in our code. So the blue line is the first layer. So the blue line is where you'd have to have your 4-foot fence. And then anything from the yellow fence, orange line back can be over 4 feet. And then
So like
when you,
people's privacy fences.
Yeah, privacy fences, and then anything over 7 feet in the building code already requires engineering. So anything that starts to get over 7 feet, it requires some specific language on how you're anchoring the fence for wind shear. So
Is that it?
that's it.
Madam City Manager, I know there was some things you wanted to comment on.
Yes. Councilmember Kirkland has raised, in case many don't know, he's raised some questions about the validity of the Iredell District. And so legal is going through that review right now, and we expect to have some information from legal. But in this document comes a reference to the pattern book. And I'm not necessarily sure that we don't even want to discuss the pattern book because the district may not be valid. So I'm in a catch-22 at this point.
So can we just remove the pattern book amendments and still be okay?
Yes, you could approve the resolution or the ordinance as is without the amendment for the pattern book.
Just remove the pattern
Yeah,
book?
so the way that the ordinance was set up, each of these amendments were attached as a separate attachments. And I think the pattern book one is for attachment B. So the rest of them could go forward if we remove attachment B from that ordinance.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pullen. Ms. City Manager, the other thing is, I think you wanted to remind council that this is literally some of the low-hanging fruit.
Oh, yes.
So that we don't have to have fence permits and they're not caught and paying for a fence permit. You want to speak to that at all?
Correct. There are obviously some non-conforming uses with the changes in the code, and we have residents who already have existing fences, including chain link fences, which was one of the first discussions about perhaps outlawing chain link fences also, which I think would have a disparate impact on some other areas of town. The variance request is something I will be bringing forward to council. The variance request right now is a very painful and expensive process, more than $3,000. So we will be talking about that through. But as you look at staff resources and what staff resources are available to review permits, it seemed like a very simple no-brainer to eliminate a permit that's already exempt from the building code, that already is allowed, and it just had a conflict in the B3 code. So it's just one less thing staff would have to be entangled with.
And specifically, the like for like and the 4-foot solves several problems, correct?
Yes. We had some, I guess, 3 variances over the last 3 years over the 42-inch. The prior requirement was nothing over 36 inches, but the rolls of what people are mostly using for fence are 36 inches. So by the time they framed it in, it was about 42 inches. So we had some variances come for that height. So that's why the request is anything less than 48 inches.
Okay, so it would be your recommendation that the pattern book be removed from this particular ordinance?
Well, I think the pattern book is, depending on
the
yes.
amendment to it?
Yes.
Okay.
Because I think we're going to touch that at some point in the very near future.
Okay, I look down and everybody's lights on. Councilmember
right.
Plunkett?
Yeah, on the transparency, is that 50% or more transparency?
Yes, 50% or more, yeah. Minimum of 50%.
Should we not amend
You wanna
that
make it
to
greater than
at
50%?
least 50%?
Greater than or equal
transparency?
to the old,
Or at
John and
least?
I know what that
Yep.
sign looks like. Greater than or equal to 50%?
Yeah, I suppose.
So if someone is so inclined, they could include that in a motion. Councilmember Plunkett, anything else?
Can you go to the first page that you had up? I had a question from that, I think, as well. Yes. Yeah, I see here on in zone P3 and P4, there's an 8-foot porch minimum.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we have some tiny houses in P3 and P4 that it seems to me like an 8-foot porch would
We're only
be
talking about
excessive.
fences tonight.
Okay.
We're only doing the red part.
That's
So
next.
Yeah, we're doing porches next.
Okay, thank you.
But now it's good for staff to know where you're going on that, so that's a good one. Okay, so you're cool, you're done. Councilmember Crouch?
I had a question with the electric fence. So is there a low voltage requirement on the electric fence? Because I know a lot of people that have perimeter pet fences around their yard. And is that considered an electric fence, or because of the voltage, or what is your definition for electric fence? And would those be illegal then? Because I know quite a few people that have those.
Mm-hmm. I would have to look that up on how they're actually defined. So.
Because I think most of them are off of a 12-volt battery. So
And
they're low
most of
voltage.
those are not the fence itself. Most of those are an accessory attachment to the fence itself. The voltage itself does not make the fence. So what we're talking about is anything that's electrified for a child to go up and touch it and be shocked.
Normally, the animal ones are on the inside and hanging off the fence so the dog,
Or in the ground.
yeah, or the invisible
they're
ones in the ground,
fences,
exactly.
but still,
Yes.
okay,
Yeah.
so that's,
We're trying to protect the children.
I know. I just wanted to clarify.
But that's
'cause
a good
That's a
point.
great question. Great question. So, and we have a second reading, so that's something that we could
amend
not
on
put it
second.
on consent and clarify that as a part of the second reading. Councilmember Lee? Plunkett's
Yeah,
back.
I just have a quick question. So on page 111, it still mentions chain link prohibited in the first layer, But then the same exact document is on 122, and it doesn't mention chain link.
So the Planning Commission voted, it was originally presented with chain link being a prohibited material, but Planning Commission voted to remove that and to allow chain link fence to be a material in the front yard.
So is the page 111 just like the original
Yeah, I believe
language,
so.
and then you put the second language?
So
down
but
on
we would be, before you to vote would be what's actually in the ordinance itself.
Okay.
Yes, so if you look at it compared to attachment C in the actual ordinance, it does not include that
Okay.
language that says prohibited chain link fence.
Okay. And then my other question was about the pattern book, so that's null and void for now. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Kirkland, thank you for waiting patiently.
What was the P and Z discussion on the pattern book? I am going to ask those questions, and I think you should too, if you wish. What was the discussion in the pattern book in P and Z? Because the change that was brought to us completely neuters it.
We didn't even have, it wasn't even mentioned.
I think they spent more time on chain link fence.
Yeah, they spent more time on chain link fence. There was very little discussion on the pattern book.
This was what was presented to amend to them, to take out all the, basically, yeah, this doesn't have any effect then.
Yeah. I guess my question was, rather than neutering it, why don't we just get rid of it in the entire authentic pattern book?
Well, in my opinion, if the discussion is we're going to shrink the B3 code into some segment where it is appropriate and applies, then there is some direction that is needed for people to be able to figure out what it is they're allowed to build, whether that's the Iredell District or something that doesn't even resemble the Iredell District and it's maybe only a couple of blocks wide. And that's why I'm saying it's sort of dependent on what we do there. I think the way the Iredell District was intended is that it is an overlay, meaning we do have some design controls that the legislature allows when it is created as an overlay. Our issue is going to become how we created it. But I think there's still some general guidance and direction that's needed. I think it bears a revisit, but.
Yeah, the thing I'm concerned about is that when you look inside the pattern book, I don't remember if it's 100 pages, but there's a lot of words like shall. The builder shall do this, the builder shall do that. But, the master
contract
thing at the beginning now says, this thing is null and void and you don't have to pay attention to it. So I think it creates confusion to have it if we're telling them up front that it's not required. Because there's many places in the document where we say, this is required and that's required. So that's kind of the nature of it is one of the just broad comments that I've heard from many developers is that the B3 code is confusing for the newcomer. It's very lengthy and it's split across different things and what is the pattern book or what is that? And I get it. I understand exactly where that's coming from. So I'm thinking, ways to clean that up. Well, we're going to continue to have confusion if we have an optional document that is non-binding that someone flips to page 63 on and sees binding language and, and that causes issues. So.
Right. Keep in mind that her recommendation is that we not make any changes to the pattern book at this time and take care of the fences and take care of the pattern book later. But Mr. Pullum has turned on his light. Is it okay if we hear from him?
Go ahead.
Yeah, Councilmember Kirkland makes some valid points on the pattern book. What I will say, I think it's good to keep it in play until we figure out what that ultimate decision is. One, on the Iredell District, and then two, what are some of those amendments that we can make to make it a little bit more clear for those who are looking to that for those development standards, even though they'll be optional. So I think, the ultimate issue, like Manager Sylvia had stated, is seeing if that Iredell District is valid, and then we can come back and address those language issues in the pattern book itself.
So my non-legal comment would be, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater, and we're trying to fix fences. But to your point of, it shouldn't be far away, it should be the next, it needs to be addressed, and I believe that's Manager Carrillo's absolute intention.
So my actual comment is that the baby was thrown out with the bathwater in the packet that we received because it completely struck the pattern book from being valid. It says this is completely optional at this point.
I understand.
Yeah, and so I'm just pointing out that, I mean, I know we talked about kind of tabling that, but still, I mean, this is a substantial change that then leaves all this other stuff in place that's confusing, so. Okay.
Words matter.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, given all of that, any other questions for Ms. Bills? I need to open a public hearing. I'm officially opening the public hearing. Madam Secretary, do we have anyone signed up for the public hearing?
No, Mayor.
I am officially closing the public hearing. I'm happy to entertain a motion, and I would encourage anyone who cared to talk about removing the pattern book references and greater than or equal to 50% transparency if you are so inclined.
And clarifying pet fences.
And clarifying pet fences. Thank you.
So I'll make that motion. I motion that we approve this with a few exceptions. The first one is that for the second reading, we come back with on the 50% transparency, we say 50% or greater transparency, that we make a statement about allowing pet fences as long as they're not accessible to children, and that we remove the references to the pattern book at this time.
Councilmember Kirkland, would it be, because of those changes, would you want that on consent or on the regular agenda for next time? Or on consent, and if it's clear, you're fine?
I mean, we can do it on consent.
Okay.
And then
We can always
if we
pull
want to
it.
pull it, then we can pull it. Yeah.
All right. I have a motion, a very
Second.
well stated motion from Councilmember Kirkland. I have a second from Councilmember Lee. Is everybody clear about what you're voting on? Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll. Thank you, Ms. Bills.
Councilmember Kirkland.
Yes.
Councilmember Lee.
Yes.
Councilmember Plunkett.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Rogers.
Yes.
Councilmember Crouch.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously. Council, we are moving on to item 5, executive session. City Council shall convene into closed executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.071 to seek the advice of legal counsel regarding the City Council's oversight of the Bastrop Economic Development Corporation, including personnel, financial, and other related matters. It is 6:15, and we are in executive session. Good evening. It is 7:20, and we are out of executive session. We are on item number 6, take any necessary or appropriate action on matters posted for consideration in closed executive session. Councilmember Kirkland?
Motion to approve Resolution R 2023-44, Mayor.
Second?
I have a motion from Councilmember Kirkland to approve Resolution R 2023-44, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Rogers. Is there any further discussion? Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Kirkland.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Rogers.
Yes.
Councilmember Lee.
Yes.
Councilmember Plunkett.
Yes.
Councilmember Crouch.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. We are on item number 7. Councilmember Kirkland?
Motion to adjourn.
It is 7:20. I have a motion to adjourn from Councilmember Kirkland
Second?
and a second from Councilmember Crouch. It is 7:20, and we are adjourned.